Hello, Peter Charleston here. Welcome to the Thrive Learning preview courses. In this second preview topic, I'd like to spend the next 10 minutes talking to you about people's attitudes and your attitude in particular to whether people can change or not, whether you can change or not. So I'm just going to share my screen and give you some slides to have a look at and for us to think about. So here we go. Can people change? And have a think about what your attitudes towards change, how they influence your life. So I hear a lot of people say, well, that's just the way I am. Or a lot of my clients in particular talk about people in their life who say, that's just the way I am. You need to accept me for who I am, which sometimes is code for, well, I'm not going to change. I don't want to change. And this is how I'm going to be in the future. So many people actually don't think they can change or don't believe they can change. And often these people come across as fairly stubborn. They've got rigid black and white thinking. And my idea on that is that helps them sort life in neat categories. It helps them control their lives and it helps them manage their anxiety, but it doesn't necessarily lead to a good life. To think about all the things that can potentially change in your life, there's quite a lot, and I've just got a couple on this slide here. This is our potential. When we change our attitudes, beliefs, when we reframe a situation, when we learn coping skills, when we learn new habits, when we change our priorities, this can have a tremendous effect on our lives, quite a strong impact. And these things do change our personality. When we make a conscious effort to make these changes, our life changes. So my attitude towards change is there. We have a lot of potential to change a lot of things in our lives. It's just that many people don't seem to do so. Have a think about this quote from David Schnarch, who was a American couples therapist who wrote several best-selling books. We are often the most sadistic when dodging our own development. I think he's very true in summarizing what happens when we're avoiding change, when we're avoiding improving ourselves. Many people don't change their bad habits because it takes effort to do so, and they choose the easy option instead of putting the effort into change and confronting themselves. But you self-sabotage every time you avoid your own development. There must be a better way. So what I mean by personality, one way of looking at personality is looking at the world's most popular personality test or indicator, which is the Myers-Briggs, taken by millions of people over the last 50 or 60 years. There are 4 different continuums on this test that people get rated on: introvert, extrovert, sensing, intuition, thinking, feeling, and judgment and perception. And these are all different aspects of our personality. The interesting thing we've found over time is that people who take the Myers-Briggs several times in their life appear to have a different result, a different personality the next time they do so. So it might be 2 years down the track, 5 years, 10 years. Some claim this is because we become more aware of ourselves over time. So our later test actually has a more accurate version of who we are. Others believe that personality actually changes over time. And I believe both is possible. we do change over time. We also become more aware of ourselves over time. So take introvert, extrovert, for instance, which is the way people get their energy for life. Now, introverts may always be introverts, as in I get my energy from my internal world, my thoughts, my beliefs, my reflections. But I can also learn the skills of the extrovert so that my personality changes over time and develops. I remain an introvert, but I then have extrovert skills. So that's the same with each of the different continuums on the Myers-Briggs scale. There are parts of our personality that remains relatively stable over time, but there's a lot that also can change. Here's another quote to consider. If the only tool you have is a hammer, you tend to treat everything as if it were a nail. If you're responsible for the attitude, I think everyone is responsible for the attitude we adopt in any situation we're in. So attitude is made up of emotions, self-talk, beliefs, and expectations about that situation. So I bring my attitude to the situation. And attitude is a bit like a magnet that either attracts positivity or negativity. And as my personality develops, I can be more conscious of choosing the right attitude for me in any given moment. So if we just look at attitude, we have power over our own attitudes, potentially. Your attitude forms the basis for the way in which you approach everything you do. So the reason why I look at attitude as an aspect of personality is it provides such a powerful influence over us and how we experience things. So if you can change your attitude, there's all sorts of different things you can change about yourself. For instance, the way you interpret a situation is influenced by things like your self-worth and self-respect. How you interpret what's happening to you and how someone else is behaving towards you. For instance, if your partner during a discussion walks out on you and slams the door, there's different ways of interpreting what just happened. If you interpret that behavior as they don't love me anymore, they don't like me because of X, Y, and Z about myself. So if you interpret it as it's my fault, they don't love me, that's low self-worth talking. Your low self-worth and low self-respect influence your interpretation of the event very strongly. High self-worth, high self-respect, that person would interpret the same situation very differently. They've just walked out and slammed the door because they didn't like what they heard. It may have nothing to do with whether they love me or not. Their behavior is their responsibility. So that's high self-worth and high self-respect talking, interpreting the same situation. I'm not blaming myself. I'm accurately letting them take responsibility for their own behavior. And I'm not running after them either. I'm just maintaining my centeredness. So that's just one example of the way we interpret can be very different. And the way we interpret something determines how we handle something. And we can get better at our interpretations because we can get better at improving our self-worth and self-respect. So there's some other aspects of our personality that we can change. Here's some research to have a think about. When faced with life-threatening situations, 10% of people stay calm and 90% panic. apparently, according to this piece of research, the difference between the two groups is that those who are most likely to survive a life-threatening situation actually find opportunity within the difficult situation. So they're able to interpret what's going on for them in a healthy or constructive way. So we can learn to change our reactions to things and respond in more healthy ways to difficult situations. They're just a couple of things that I believe we all have potential to improve. Using affirmations, for instance, is one basic way to start. The way in terms of providing yourself with the right way of seeing things, seeing obstacles as challenges, for instance, believing that you're willing to take risks, feeling that you're allowed to be happy. I can choose how others affect me. I do the best I can and I'm satisfied with that. All of these affirmations make up the way you treat yourself and the way you interpret different situations you're in. Again, that's just another aspect that we have the potential to change. Improving the way we learn is also open to change. We know that learning increases performance and learning can increase our own happiness. So as we learn to work in better ways, for instance, our performance improves. Keeping our mind open to different forms of feedback helps us learn. And all of these skills we can improve on. So have a think about whether you're open to learn and how well and easily you do learn from different situations you're in. If we're too rigid in our thinking, too black and white in our thinking, we don't necessarily learn from situations. When we're open to learning, we allow ourselves to be in the right emotional state. We understand how we best learn. We deal better with success and failure. And a lot of this is about being able to reflect well on what situations we face without blame, but in taking responsibility for the part we need to take responsibility for. When I'm not blaming myself, I'm much more likely to learn from my mistakes. When I'm not blaming other people, I'm much more likely to learn how to handle them better. So here, they're just a couple of things that we cover within the Thrive Learning courses. Things like positive self-talk, the right attitude, how to interpret situations in more healthy ways, how to create affirmations for self so that you have a better relationship with self. So these are some of the things that we cover within the Thrive courses, which clearly can create better performance, more happiness, lasting success. So I hope this has given you a little taste of what we cover within Thrive courses. What they are is topics that last for 30 minutes. It's usually a 30-minute webinar plus a workbook that allows you to reflect on the topic and work through whatever insights you get from that topic. We then also have group coaching regarding the different topics within the courses you take. And so the learning is reinforced through feedback and discussion. So I hope to see you again soon. Bye for now.